आत्मरन मोहन जू की जाय नित्य प्रविष्टो विष्णुपार अष्टोत्तर शत शिशिमार भक्ति वेदांत नारायण गोसाई महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जाय नित्य प्रविष्टो विष्णुपार अष्टोत्तर शत शिशिमार भक्ति वेदांत वामन गोसाई महाराज की जाय नित्य प्रविष्टो विष्णुपार अष्टोत्तर शत शिशिमार श्री भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जाय नित्य प्रविष्टो विष्णुपार अशतर्षतश्मर भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जाय नित्य प्रविष्ट महाभागवत श्री गोक्षरस बाबूजी महाराज की जाय नित्य प्रविष्ट श्री सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जाय नित्य प्रविष्ट वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबूजी महाराज की जाय श्री रूपानुगौर्य गुरु वार्ग की जाय श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ शार गोसाई प्रभु की जाय श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर पार्षद वृंद की जाय नाम आचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जाय प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जाय श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जाय सर्व अभिष्ट विराति गिरिराज महाराज की जाय श्री राधा कुंद श्याम कुंद की जाय श्री यमुना देवी गंगा देवी की जाय श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जाय श्री भक्ति देवी की जाय श्री पूर्णमासी योगमाया की जाय श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जाय श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जाय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जाय समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जाय श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्रीश्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायणेति नामिने। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनेति नामिने। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। कुरवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकायै तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तमनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुस्तं सार्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्थो यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सतं नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वं नायमं चरणान्तिकं। भक्त्या विहीना अपराधलक्षाय क्षिप्ताष्टकामादितरङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि त्वां शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दं। भज श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे Hare Ram, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hari Bol, everybody. Ganga Mataji, Pradyumna Prabhu, Mantramurti Mataji. Oh, interesting, Pradyumna Prabhu. Hari Bol, Raseshwari Mataji, Madhavi Didi. Tandavat pranams, everybody. Sorry. What do you mean Chaitanya Guru? Do you mean Chaita Guru? Pradyumna Guru? You said that. Yeah, but yeah, that Pingala was, yeah, you mean Chaita Guru, right? Yeah. Yeah, that was very beautiful, that story of Pingala. Okay. So, I just like to every now and then revisit, get a recap of where we are, just so that yeah. So, Lord Brahma and the other demigods came to Dwarka and offered their prayers to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, anticipating his imminent disappearance. Addressing Brahma, Lord Krishna disclosed that he would soon depart from this world after withdrawing the Yadu dynasty, having already made the arrangements for that through the curse of the sages. Understanding Krishna's plan, Uddhav, the unalloyed devotee and dearest friend of Krishna, was overwhelmed with separation and anxiety. Uddhav approached Krishna with folded hands, pleading him to take him along with him to his spiritual abode. During his manifest pastimes on the earth, Krishna had exchanges with several of his devotees at Vrindavan, Mathura, Dwarka, Indraprastha, Hastinapur, Mithila, and so on. He had also graced the heavenly planets with his presence and gave darshan to Aditi and Kashyapa during the Parijat tree episode, and he had visited the lower planets to retrieve Sandipani Muni's son and met Bali Maharaj and Yamaraj there. He even went to Vaikuntha and met Mahavishnu and others on the plea of retrieving the sons of a Brahman in Dwarka. One place where Krishna hadn't personally visited during his earthly sojourn, however, was Badarik Ashram, where great sages Nar Narayan resided. With his departure due now, Krishna wanted Uddhav to go and enlighten the sages at Badarik Ashram on his behalf. Krishna considered Uddhav as good as his own self, and thus imparted confidential teachings called the Uddhava-gīta to him. This Uddhava-gīta forms the longest philosophical section of this magnum opus literature, Srimad Bhagavatam. In it, Krishna spoke about bhakti, jnana, and vairagya to teach us through Uddhav. So, Krishna spoke to Uddhav. Dear Uddhav, my mission here is complete. As I depart, you too should not remain here, as the earth would be bereft of all piety in Kali Yuga with people addicted to sinful life. Give up all attachments, fix your mind on me, and see everything with an equal vision and renounced spirit. Hearing about the renounced spirit suggested by Krishna, Uddhav asked, how can I cultivate such detached vision, since renunciation is difficult for ordinary people who are attached to sense enjoyment? Krishna answered, an intelligent person can analyze worldly situations by perception, common sense, and logic to rise above sense enjoyment. By inculcating certain principles and avoiding certain activities, one can search out and ultimately attain me, the Supreme Lord. Therein lies the glory of human life. King Yadu had once seen a young Avadut Brahman, Lord Dattatreya, who appeared learned, wandering about fearlessly. Yadu learnt that the Brahman had taken shelter of 24 gurus. And who are those 24 gurus? Let's see. 24 gurus, 11th canto. Okay, so here are the 24 gurus. Uh-oh. Let me shut this. I have my blocker on. Okay, it's my Gurudev explains. Here. Sorry, I have all websites blocked except for a few, like Pure Bhakti, and so. Okay, so what is it? So Yadu learnt that the Brahman had taken shelter of 24 gurus. Who are they? These are the ones that we've read so far. First was the earth, then the mountains, trees, air, sky, water, fire, the moon, the sun, the python, the moth, the black honeybee, and no, one was a bumblebee, and then the other was a honeybee, the elephant, the deer, the fish. This no, we didn't. Oh, where's Pingala? Pingala's missing from here. Anyhow, the deer, the fish, the small baby, an unmarried girl. Yeah, for some reason it's missing Pingala. Anyways, so he had learned the science of the self and developed detachment by carefully studying their activities and qualities with his refined intelligence. Yadu worshipped him and developed equal vision. And having developed equal vision, became free from all material attachments. So now let's go to Uddhava-gīta, the 3rd chapter. Oops. Detachment from all that is material, chapter 3. So this is a chapter summary by Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Ṭhākura. In this chapter, the Avadhut Brahman describes the lessons to be learned from the 7 remaining spiritual masters, beginning with the Cakravartī bird. So we're going to go through 7 spiritual masters in this chapter. He also describes an additional guru, one's own body. So the instruction of the Cakravartī bird is that attachment is the mother of all distress. One who is unattached and has no material possessions is qualified to achieve unlimited happiness. 2. The Avadhut Brahman learned from the foolish, lazy boy that by becoming free from anxiety, one can nicely worship the Supreme Lord and experience transcendental bliss. 3. The instruction received from the young girl, who kept only one conch shell bangle on each wrist, is that one should remain alone and thus steady his mind. Only in such a condition will it be possible for one to fix his mind completely on the Supreme Lord. Once, several men arrived to ask the hand of a young girl, whose relatives had coincidentally left the house. She went inside and began to prepare food for the unexpected guest by beating rice paddy. At that time, her conch shell bangles made a loud noise, rattling against each other. In order to stop the sounds, the girl broke off the bangles one by one, until at last, only one remained on each arm. Just as 2 or more bangles make noise, if 2 or more people live together, there is bound to be quarrel and useless gossiping. I like this one, the arrow maker. 4. The Avadhut Brahman also received instruction from the arrow maker, who was absorbed in constructing an arrow that he did not even notice that the king was passing right by him on the road. And that in the same way, one should worship Sri Hari with undivided attention and a controlled mind. 5. The lesson to be learned from the serpent is that a sage should wander alone, should not live in any pre-arranged place, should be always careful and grave, should not reveal his movements, should take assistance from no one, and should speak little. 6. This is a lesson to be learned from the spider. Just as a spider makes its web from its own saliva and then withdraws it, the Supreme Lord creates this universe from out of himself and then winds it up into his own body. 7. From the weak insects that assured the form of a wasp, the Avadhut Brahman learns that the living entity, under the sway of affection, hatred, and fear, attains in his next life the identity of that object upon which he has fixed his attention. 8. Realizing that the temporary material body is subject to birth and death, and that this human form of body is extremely rarely achieved, a sober person should give up his attachment for the body and should properly utilize his time for acquiring knowledge so that he can attain the goal of life. So we come to verse 1. Shri Brahmana Uvacha. Let me just quickly check the comments. 1 second. Haribol Suryavi Didi, Dandavat Pranams. Yes, Pajamnaru, Nar Narayan is an avatar of, yes, is an avatar of Vishnu. Nara is Arjuna and Narayan is Vishnu, right? And was Pingala initiated? I haven't heard any explanation about that. I don't think so, but I don't know. It's possible. Sudevi Didi Dandavat Pranam. Okay. Shri Brahmana Uvacha Parigraho hi dukkaya yadyat priyatamam nrinam anantam sukham apnoti tarvidvan yastvakinchanam. The Avadhut Brahman said, everyone considers something of this world to be very dear to him. Because of such attachment, one ultimately becomes morose. One who understands this simple truth should give up the false sense of possessiveness and thus tread the path to true happiness. Sārārtha-darśinī commentary by Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura. This chapter describes 7 spiritual masters, beginning with the Kurara bird. The material body has been added as the 8th spiritual master in this chapter. So in total, the lessons to be learned from 25 spiritual masters are described, not 24, 25, that's interesting. The first 2 verses of this chapter deal with the lesson to be learned from the Kurara bird. When one enjoys the object that is most dear to him, he will certainly face great distress later on. On the other hand, those who remain aloof from such attachment, remaining as akinchan, are known to be as learned men who are qualified to achieve unlimited happiness. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya commentary by Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Gosvāmī Prabhupāda. As a result of forgetfulness of the Supreme Lord, the conditioned soul's taste for objects produced by the material modes of passion and ignorance increases unlimitedly. The conditioned souls rarely have the inclination to attain the platform of pure goodness, from which one can realize the Supreme Lord. All material miseries are produced from the influence of the modes of passion and ignorance. The momentary lack of distress experienced due to the influence of the mode of goodness is not the same as genuine spiritual happiness. Unalloyed devotees do not notice the presence of temporary distress produced by the interaction of the modes of nature because they experience unlimited happiness due to being situated on the platform of pure goodness. Conditioned souls who are under the control of their senses run after limited, ever-changing and tempting material objects, and thus become beggars to achieve their objectives. This is the cause of their distress. Samisham kuraram jagnur balinonye niramisha tadamisham parityajya sasukang samavindata. Once, a large Kurara bird was very hungry, being unable to find any prey, it attacked a weaker Kurara bird who had some flesh in its claws. Being in danger of his life, the weaker Kurara bird gave up his meat and thereby attained actual happiness. Sārārtha-darśinī. The word samisham in this verse refers to a meat-eating Kurara bird. When a Kurara bird was chased by another stronger Kurara bird, it dropped the flesh in its claws and thus achieved happiness. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Incited by the modes of nature, birds become violent and kill other birds, either to eat them or to steal meat captured by them. Hawks, vultures, and eagles are in this category. A human being should give up the envious propensity to commit violence against others and should take to Krishna consciousness, whereby one sees every living entity as equal to oneself. On this platform of actual happiness, one does not envy anyone, and thus sees no one as his enemy. Na me manapamanosto na chintageha putrinam atma krida atma ratir vicharami balavat. Those who are attached to family life are always anxious about their children, wealth, and reputation. But I have nothing to do with all of these. I do not worry about a family, and I have no concern for praise or insult. I live the life of the eternal soul, and I experience affection on the spiritual platform. Thus, I wander over the earth like a child. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. When one has no interest in accumulating worldly praise or criticism, he can become fixed in the science of the self. Dvaviva chintaya mukto paramananda apluto yo vimukto jaro balo yo gunebhya param gata. In this world, two types of people are free from all anxiety and merged in great happiness. One is the retarded and childish fool. One is the retarded and childish fool, and the other is an advanced transcendentalist who knows the science of the absolute truth. Sārārtha-darśinī. In this verse, the lesson to be learned from a foolish boy is described. The Brahmin said, I don't care for honor and dishonor. I am not worried about house, children, and so on. Just like a child, I happily wander about alone in this world. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya commentary. The more one prays for sensual enjoyment in this material world, the more his desires for such enjoyment increase, so that he becomes more and more absorbed in matter. Those who are indifferent to material pleasures are freed from material miseries and are happy. Kvachit kumari tatmanam vrinanan. Kvachit kumari tatmanam vrinanan grihamagatan swayam tam arhayam asa kvapi yateshu bandushu. Once, a girl of a marriageable age was at home alone because her parents and relatives were away. At that time, some men came to ask for her hand in marriage, and so she received them with all hospitality. Sārārtha-darśinī. The lesson to be learned from the unmarried girl is being described. Once, some men went to the house of an unmarried girl to ask for her hand in marriage. It so happened that the girl's relatives were away from home at the time. So, the unmarried girl received the guests nicely, offering them asans of kusha grass and water. Oh, by the way, the Wi-Fi isn't working, and so I'm using my mobile hotspot. If the connection gets choppy, just let me know. Tesham abhyavaharartham shalin rahasi partiva avagnantya prakoshtastash chakru shankha svanam mahat. O king, when that unmarried girl began to beat rice paddy to prepare food for the unexpected guests, the conch-shell bangles on her arms began to collide with each other and create a loud noise. Sārārtha-darśinī. Wondering when the people of the house would return and begin to cook, the girl began to prepare rice to serve the guests. However, her conch-shell bangles began to make a loud noise. Sataj jugu sitam matva mahate vredita tata babhanjai kai kasha shankhan dvau panyor asheshayat. The girl was afraid that her guests would know that her family was poor because she was performing the menial task of husking the rice. Being very intelligent, the girl broke the conch-shell bangles so that only 2 remained on each wrist. Ubayorapya burgosho hyavagnantya swashankayo tatrapyekam nirabhidar ekasman na bhavardhvani. Thereafter, when the young girl resumed husking the rice, the bangles once again made noise by colliding with each other. Then, the girl took off 1 more bangle from each arm, leaving only 1, so that the noise completely stopped. Sārārtha-darśinī. The girl was embarrassed because husking rice is the job of a servant in the house of well-to-do people. The intelligent girl then took off her bangles one by one, leaving only 2 on each arm. When these bangles again began to make noise, she took one more bangle from each arm, leaving only 1. Anvashiksham tasya upadesham arindama lokan anucharan etan lokatattva vivitsaya. O subduer of the enemy, I travel over the surface of the earth, learning about the nature of this world. Thus, I personally witnessed the lesson taught by this girl. Sārārtha-darśinī. The Brahman sage explains to King Yadu that what he was speaking was realized knowledge. By wandering over the world, he had experienced everything that he had learned from the gurus under discussion. Instead of pretending to be an all-knowing mystic, he simply described what he had learned during his wanderings. Vase bahunam kalaho bhavid varta dvayorapi eka eva vaset tasmat kumarya iva kankana. When many people live together, there will undoubtedly be quarrels. Even if only 2 people live together, there will certainly be frivolous conversation and disagreement. That is why one should live alone, following the example of the young girl and her bangles. Sārārtha-darśinī. The lesson to be learned from the girl who removed all her bangles but one is that one who is trying to advance on the path of Jnana Yoga, which involves philosophical speculation, should live alone after giving up all desires for having the association of friends and relatives. After all, whenever people live together, they quarrel over insignificant matters and engage in much trivial talk that has no relation to their aspiration for spiritual advancement. Therefore, just to have a peaceful environment in which to practice yoga, it is recommended that one live alone. On the other hand, a princess who has been married to a qualified prince dresses herself very attractively and then appears before him to receive his love. Similarly, Bhakti Devi decorates herself with the association of Vaishnavas, who assemble to chant the holy names of the Lord and dance in ecstasy. Because the pure devotees do not associate with non-devotees, in that sense, they reside alone and thus take the lesson of the single bangle from the young girl. After all, pure devotees do not quarrel among themselves, nor do they engage in frivolous talks, because they are fully satisfied on the platform of rendering devotional service to the Lord without any material desires. Thus, devotees of the Lord happily associate with one another for the purpose of rendering service to the Lord. The Supreme Lord has personally said in the Srimad Bhagavatam 3:25-34, Naikatmatam me sprihayanti kechin matpara seva bhirata mariha yenyonyato bhagavata prasajya sabhajayante mama porushani. A pure devotee who is attached to the activities of devotional service and who always engages in the service of my lotus feet never desires to become one with me. Such a devotee, who is unflinchingly engaged, always glorifies my pastimes and activities. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. If there is more than one person in a place, there is every possibility that there will be quarrel, because each individual has his own idea and purpose. When the girl took away all her bangles except one on each wrist, there is no more noise as a result of each other. Similarly, one should give up the association of those who are not devoted to the Supreme Lord. The character of a Vaishnava is always pure. However, in places where non-devotees congregate, there will undoubtedly be envious criticism of Vaishnavas. If many people gather to glorify the Lord, there will be no conflict of interest. That is why one should worship the Lord in the association of like-minded people. This is also solitary bhajan, as described in the system of Ekayan. Mana ekatra suyanjyaj jeta shvasa jitasana vairagyabhyasa yogena driyamanam atandritaha. One should perfect his yoga sitting postures and the breathing exercises while carefully cultivating a life of renunciation. Thus, with single-minded attention, one should engage in yoga, making it the goal of his life. Sārārtha-darśinī. One should practice concentrating his mind. The lesson is to be learned from the arrow maker. This lesson is learned to... I'm starting to get tired. This lesson is to be learned from the arrow maker. The mind is always flickering due to material attachment, wandering here and there. Here it is recommended that to perfect a life of renunciation, one should practice Ashtanga Yoga mixed with devotional service. Yasmin mano labba padam yaretach chanai shanar munchati karma renun satvena vridhena vrajastamascha vidhuya nirvanam upaitanindanam. The mind can be controlled when it is fixed on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the mind is thus applied to the service of the Lord, it becomes free from polluted desires for sense gratification, so as the mode of goodness increases in strength. When one's mind is applied to the service of the Lord, it becomes free from polluted desires for sense gratification, so that as the mode of goodness increases in strength, one can completely give up the modes of passion and ignorance. When the mind is no longer fed the fuel of the modes of nature, the fire of material existence becomes extinguished, so that one achieves the transcendental platform of direct relationship with the object of his meditation, the Supreme Lord. Sārārtha-darśinī. When the mind is controlled and restrained from the desire for performing fruitive activities, it becomes cleansed of the contamination of passion and ignorance through an increase of the mode of goodness. When the mind is no longer influenced by the modes of passion and ignorance, it becomes steady, and as a result of being situated in the mode of goodness, one becomes joyful. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The three modes of material nature create conflict among one another. For that reason, those who are actually intelligent carefully control their minds. When one is freed from the influence of the modes of passion and ignorance, one achieves a life of auspiciousness. It is only possible to transcend the three modes of material nature when the mind is fully under control. Tadaivam atmanyavarudha citto navera kinchir bahirantaram va yateshu karo nripatim vrajantam isho gatatma nadadarshva parshve. There was once an arrow maker who was so absorbed in making a straight arrow that he did not even notice the king when he passed right in front of him. When one consciousness is completely fixed on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one no longer sees in terms of duality, or internal and external reality. Sārārtha-darśinī. If one desires to concentrate his mind on the Supreme Lord, he should study the example of the arrow maker. The arrow maker was so absorbed in his work that even when the king passed by with so much pomp and commotion, the arrow maker did not even notice him. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The only way to withdraw the mind from the objects of the senses is to eagerly engage in the devotional service of Lord Krishna. When the mind is not absorbed in fervently desiring to please the Supreme Lord, it wanders on the subtle platform accepting it wanders on the subtle platform of accepting and rejecting the things of this world. By surrendering unto the Supreme Lord and engaging in his devotional service, one can be freed from the continuous struggle for supremacy of the three modes of material nature. For one who is thus fully engaged, the spirit of enjoying things in a mood of being separate from Krishna will not affect him. As long as a conditioned soul wanders within the kingdom of mental speculation, having given up Krishna's service, he will remain fully absorbed in matter. In this regard, one should carefully consider this verse 2 of the Upadeshamrita. Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha jana sangashaloliam cha sharbhir bhaktir vinashyati. One's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities. 1. Eating more than necessary or collecting more funds than required. 2. Over-endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. 3. Talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. 4. Practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them, and not for the sake of spiritual advancement. Or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. 5. Associating with worldly-minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. 6. Being greedy for mundane achievements. Ekacharyanike tasyar apramato hashaya alakshamana acharar mune kolpa bhashana. Oh, Manjari's mentioning, like she's asking, do you want to go on darshan at 9 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay. 9 o'clock. Okay. A saintly person should wander about alone, without any companion, and without a fixed residence. Indeed, just to avoid bad association, he should be careful so that he will not even be recognized by others. While traveling here and there, he should avoid speaking more than what is absolutely necessary. Sārārtha-darśinī. The lesson to be learned from the snake is herein described. As a snake wanders about alone, out of fear of people behaving in such a way, that no one will notice it, an introspective sage should conduct his life in the same manner. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The propensity for material enjoyment is the cause of the living entity's distress. This propensity also covers his actual purpose in life. Instead of opposing the previously followed social etiquette, if one accepts it without attachment, then gradually he will achieve auspiciousness. When one follows the varnashram system, he takes the first step in self-realization. One should work honestly and control his propensity for sexual enjoyment, either by completely renouncing it as a brahmachari or sannyasi, or by accepting the concession offered to the householder. I'm okay, Shri Mataji. Now I'm feeling okay. I was feeling a little tired, but I'm feeling more awake now. Without regulating one's life, everything will be performed whimsically, so that it will be impossible to make spiritual advancement. A person's attachment to society, friendship, and love is a great impediment on the path of spiritual elevation. If one maintains such attachments, progress will be very slow. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught us by his personal example what a devotee should and should not do. Simply obedience to these principles that will lead one to the perfection of life. There is no use of mundane society, which simply directs us toward the path of sense gratification. Griharambo hi dukhaya laschadruvatmana sarpaparam vishmam pravishya sukhamete. For the devotees who possess perishable material bodies, building a house is miserable and useless. A snake enters a hole created and lives happily. Let's see what the commentary for this says. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Because the snake does not build its own house, but occupy constructed by others, it does not become entangled in the miseries of building a residence. The world have accepted a great burden by providing electric lights, vehicles, fans. They provide all this for the Vaishnavas. They should continue to do so. Because Vaishnavas are travelers on the path of spiritual life, they do not carry the great burden of material advancement, because they abstract the essence of life. They do not undergo great inconvenience just for the comfort of their bodies, but instead live in a world built by others without becoming attached to it. Expertise in the act of renovation and preserving one's family or society traditions is not the goal of those who travel on the path of spiritual life. Eko narayano deva purvashishtam samayaya sanghritya kalaya kalpanta idamishvara eka eva dvitiyo bhur atma dharo kilashaya. Narayan is the worshipable Lord of the universe and of all the living entities contained therein. Working independently, the Lord creates the cosmic manifestation by directing his potency. To enact the annihilation of the universe, the Lord employs his personal expansion, time, thus withdrawing everything to remain within himself. Thus, the Lord is the reservoir of all potencies. The Pradhan, which is the cause of the cosmic manifestation, is conserved within the Lord and thus is non-different from him. After the annihilation of the universe, the Lord alone exists as one without a second. Sārārtha-darśinī. The Avadut Brahman says, I have learned from the spider how the Supreme Lord creates the universe. Lord Narayan alone, without anyone's help, created the universes by manipulating his energies. Under the control of time, annihilated them. So he created universes by manipulating his energies under the control of time, and then annihilated them. After the annihilation, the Lord remained as one without a second. All the conditioned living entities, as well as the material energies, became merged within the Lord. All living entities and material energies became merged within the Lord. Thus, he is the shelter of all energies. Kalenatmanubhavena samyam nitasu shaktishu sattvadishvadi purusha pradhana purusheshvara paravaranam parama aste kaivalya sangita kevalanubhavananda sandoho nirupadika. When his material energies, such as the mode of passion, are in a neutral condition by his influence in the form of time, the Lord remains as the supreme controller. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the controller of the material nature, the Lord of the Purusha avatars, the only shelter of the living entities, including the demigods headed by Brahma. The Lord is fully transcendental, the personification of supreme bliss, the primeval Lord, and the giver of liberation. Sārārtha-darśinī. The Supreme Lord neutralizes the material energies, such as the mode of goodness, by displaying his potencies in the form of time. Even in that neutral state, the Lord remains the controller of the material nature, as well as the Purusha avatars. That's Karna-dakshay Vishnu, Kshira-dakshay Vishnu. Karna-dakshay Vishnu, Garbha-dakshay Vishnu, and Kshira-dakshay Vishnu. He is the supremely worshipable Lord of all liberated and conditioned souls. Because there are no activities, such as the creation of the universe, in that neutral state, the Supreme Lord enjoys eternal happiness in his own mood, referred to as Yoga Nidra. He is called Nirupadika because at that time his energy, Maya, remains dormant. It is stated in the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam that when the energies of the Supreme Lord are dormant, he remains awake. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. While trying to ascertain the nature of the absolute truth with the help of their speculations, conditioned souls come to the conclusion that it is impersonal. Less intelligent people, under the grips of illusion, imagine that the living entities and the Supreme Lord are one and the same. With this conclusion, they focus their attention on the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord. According to the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead creates, sustains, and annihilates this universe, which is under the control of time by the three modes of material nature. The supremely independent Lord induces the conditioned living entities, who are his fragmental parts, to dance as the enjoyers of the objects of the senses. When one gains practical experience that the gross and subtle material bodies are simply coverings of the eternal soul, one gives up the foolishness of material attachment and becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is actual liberation, the highest form of which is to reside in Vraj and relish supreme bliss, free from all material designations. Just checking the comments now. Okay. Kevalatmanubhavena swamayam trinugunatmikan sankshobhyayam srajatyado taya sutram arindamam. O subduer of the enemies, at the time of creation, the Supreme Personality of Godhead expands his energy in the form of time, and by glancing over his material energy Maya, which is composed of the three modes of material nature, the Mahat Tattva becomes manifest. Sārārtha-darśinī. After describing the annihilation, creation is now being described. By his own spiritual energy, the Supreme Lord awakens his material energy Maya and agitates her by means of his glance. In this way, he creates the Mahat Tattva, which consists of the total material ingredients and the power of creation. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The fully cognizant Supreme Lord is the creator of the conditioned souls and the material world. The infinitesimal conditioned living entities can attain the ultimate goal of life, love of God, by executing practical devotional service under the guidance of a pure devotee. The conception that this material world is false and that the infinitesimal living entities can merge in the infinite Supreme Lord at the time of liberation is not factual. Tamahustri guna vyaktim srijantim vishvato mukhan yasmin protam ivam vishvam yena sangsare sarate puman. The compilers of the scriptures describe the Mahat Tattva from which the cosmic manifestation springs to be the effect of the three modes of material nature. Indeed, this universe is resting within that Mahat Tattva, and due to its potency, the living entity undergoes material existence. Sārārtha-darśinī. The word tam in this verse indicates the Mahat Tattva, which is the manifestation of the three modes of material nature, and which creates the various planets with the help of the false ego. How have the varieties of planets and living entities been created? This is described in the Vedas as follows. O Gautama, it is the life air that sustains all the planets of the universe. It is the air that sustains all the planets of the universe and the varieties of living entities residing on them. The living entities are traveling throughout the material existence by the force of air. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The material creation is a manifestation of the Lord's external energy, which covers the healthy condition of the living entities who are spiritual by nature, and induces them to become masters of the material universe, which is actually under the control of time. By thinking themselves to be the enjoyers of material nature, the insignificant living entities mistakenly imitate the Supreme Lord and thus create the misfortune of wandering within the conditioned state of material existence under the control of perverted desires. Undivided devotional service to the Supreme Lord is real liberation. As soon as one is separated from the Lord's service due to the influence of Maya, one tries to become the master. This is the actual fault of This is the actual fault of the living entities in this material world, and it results from their aversion to the service of the Supreme Lord. Yatornanabhir hridayad Yatornanabhir hridayad urnam santatya vaktrayata Taya vihrita bhuyastam grasateva maheshvara. Just as from within himself the spider manifests the thread through its mouth, plays with it for some time, and then eventually withdraws it within himself. The Supreme Lord creates this universe from his own self, utilizes it for some time, and then he eventually withdraws it within his own self. Sārārtha-darśinī. The word urnanabhi indicates a spider. A spider releases threads from her heart through her mouth, creates a web, and plays on it. Then again, it swallows the entire web. In the same way, the Supreme Lord creates the entire universe from his own self, and then, after enjoying his pastimes, again withdraws it within his own self. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The spirit souls wander about in this temporary world which is created by the Supersoul. Just as a spider manifests thread from its body and then again winds it up within itself, the Supreme Lord creates this temporary material world which is a manifestation of his inferior energy and then again winds it up. This temporary material world is under the control of time, and it is full of miseries. Okay, this is the last verse that we're reading in this chapter for today. Yatra yatra manodehi dharayet sakalam dhiya sneha dveshayad vapi yati tat tat swarupatam. Whatever a living entity concentrates his mind upon, whether out of affection, hatred, he will attain in Sārārtha-darśinī. The absolute Brahman says, the Supreme Lord, who are attached to meditating a transcendental form, easily attain the same bodily features as the Lord. This is not at all wonderful. I have this lesson from the wasp. The next two verses describe the lesson to be learned from the wasp. When one's mind meditates upon the particular form, when one's mind meditates on a particular form without deviation, he'll certainly attain that form in the future. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The living entity, who is embodied by gross and subtle matter, experiences affection, hatred, or fearfulness for the objects of his. They feel affection, hatred, and fearfulness for the object of his attachment, as dictated by his intelligence, which is under the control of the spirit of material enjoyment. Ultimately, one attains the form of the object upon which he meditates. If one can renounce the desire for material enjoyment and thus attract the attention of the unlimitedly affectionate Lord, while displaying anger toward those who are envious of the Lord and fear of the consequences of absorption and sense gratification, he can attain eternal happiness he can attain an eternal spiritual form as a servant of the Supreme Lord in his transcendental abode. Okay, so tomorrow we will finish off this verse here. This is the last one. Last guru of the 24 gurus, the wasp. Hi. Okay, I know Raseshwari Mataji, you have to go now. Thanks so much for joining. And oh God, so sorry guys for falling asleep so much while I was reading. I only slept 3.5 hours last night, so that's why I'm a little. Um, all right. Haribol Rukmini Didi. Dandavat pranams. Yeah, so that's why I was not fully there. Anyways, tomorrow I'm going to do a recap of everything that we read. Like, I want to read all just a summary of each one of the 24 gurus. Yeah, because tomorrow we'll be finishing. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaur Hari Bol. Jai Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju Ki Jai Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Rashata Rashata Shishmar Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Shila Gurudev Ki Jai Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Rashata Rashata Shishmar Shila Bhaktivedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Rashata Rashata Shishmar Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nityal Pravishtam Vishnupad Rashata Rashata Shishmar Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Nityal Pravishtam Vishnupad Rashata Rashata Shishmar Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Goswami Prabhupāda Ki Jai Nityal Pravishta Maha Bhagavat Śrīla Gaurkishora Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Nityal Pravishta Śrīla Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Ṭhākura Ki Jai Nityal Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Śrīla Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Rupa Nagakoriya Guru Varga Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Shar Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda Ki Jai Namachay Shri Hairas Ṭhākura Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaur Mandala Vraja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Radhakun Shamakun Nimunoganga Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Uddhava-gīta Ki Jai Lord Dattatreya Shri Dattatreya Ki Jai Shri Yadu Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Shri Srila Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura Sārārtha-darśinī Ki Jai Srila Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Goswami Prabhupāda Gauḍīya Bhāṣya Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Sattvatai Namaha Vancha Kalpubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Dandavat Pranams everybody. Yeah, you guys are so tolerant. Anyways, Haribol Rukmini Didi. The reason why I went to sleep so late last night is because I sent out a post on Vine of Devotion. Like I always do this. I'm trying to send out something every Akadashi Eve, but I didn't manage to write anything on Akadashi Eve, and so then I started writing something on Akadashi, and I started a bit late, and I didn't fully clearly have the topic in my head, so I just had to figure it out the whole way through, and so it took me a while to write. But if you'd like to check it out, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Let me just open it 1 second. Vine of Devotion. So vineofdevotion.com, that's my website. And I have 5 ways I get others to hold me accountable. It's kind of a long post though. There's like 2,300 words. But yeah, so these are all just different methods I get others to hold me accountable. And this Srimad Bhagavatam reading is one of them. Actually, I think it's the first thing I mentioned. Anyways. All right. If you do read it, let me know what you think. Like if All right. Hari Bol Rukmini Didi. All right. See you all tomorrow. Oh, and what I'm doing at the end of each reading now. In 3 days will be the Ras Yatra of Lord Balaram, and also the appearance day of Shamananda Prabhu and Sri Vamsi Varananda Ṭhākura. Then in 8 days from now is the appearance day of Srila Bhakti Kumud Santa Goswami Maharaj and the disappearance day of Sri Akinchana Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj. And then in 9 days from now is the disappearance day of Abhiram Thakur. Yeah. And then Srila Bhakti Vallabha Tirtha Goswami Maharaj's disappearance day is in 11 days from now. And also the beginning of Keshavrat. And then the day after that is Vrindavan Das Thakur's disappearance day. And then Varutini Ekadashi. And then Gadadhar Pandit's appearance days in 17 days from now. All right. Jai Shri Radhe. See you all tomorrow.